Hey, what's up guys, DarkArmedDuelist, and I'm going to be doing a branded Springans deck profile. So I'm really excited for you guys because with the recent release of the Albaz Strike Structure deck, this deck got a major power boost, even getting a new main deck monster, Springans Kit, which is a really awesome card that helps out the deck a lot. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like in your name description in a single video, getting a signed card sent in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of the new Springans Kit. This card is great for the deck because it has the ability that if you have a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Awalt as a material on your field or in the grave, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if this card is normal or special summon, you can add to your hand one of your branded spell or traps that's banished or in your deck or graveyard, and then place one card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. And you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. This card is really good at tying the branded and Springans archetypes together so you can get all sorts of amazing plays. We then play 3 copies of Springans Rocky. Springans Rocky is a good card for the deck because it has the ability that if this card is normal or special summoned, then you can target a Great Sandseas Golgonda or a Springans monster in your graveyard, except another copy of this card, and add it back to your hand. And if this card is in your hand, field, or graveyard, then you can target a Springans XZ monster that you control and attach this card as a material, and you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. This card is great just in case your copies of your Great Sandseas get sent to the graveyard. You can actually recover it with this card and also get all sorts of different Springans monsters back to your hand. We then play 3 copies of Springans Brothers. Springans Brothers is a really good card as well because if this card is sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard, then you can target a Springans monster in the graveyard and special summon it in defense position, which is a really good effect. And then it also shares the effect, just like Rocky, that you can attach this card to a Springans XZ monster, which is really awesome. We then play 2 copies of Springans Branga. Springans Branga is a neat card for the deck because it has the ability that if it's in your hand, field, or graveyard, that you can target a Springans XZ and attach this card as a material. And you can also banish this card and a Springans monster with a different name from your graveyard to add a Springans card from your deck to your hand. You just play 2 copies of this card because it is a high level monster, so you don't want to see too many copies of this card, and it's super easy to get in the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Captain Sargus. Captain Sargus is really good, but just as a one of, in my opinion, I don't feel like I need any more than a single copy of this card, but it's a really good card because it can also attach itself to a Springans XZ monster as a material, and then during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can detach a material from an XZ monster that you control, and then target a face-up card on the field and destroy it. And you can only use effect of this card once per turn, and also has the ability that a Springans XZ monster that has this card as a material gains 500 attack points, which is pretty good. We then play a single copy of Springans Pador. Pador is just a one-of to me. I don't feel like you need any more than a single copy of this card, and it has the ability that you can tribute this card and then target a Springans monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So it's a 1-for-1 trade. So it's a really neat card, but I only feel like a single copy of it is necessary, and it also shares that ability, just like all your other Springans monsters, that it can attach itself as a material to a Springans XZ. We then play 2 copies of Fallen of Awalt. Fallen of Awalt is really good in the deck because it helps us go in for cards like Mirror Jade and all of the really powerful monsters that we have in the extra deck, and it's also a super poly on legs. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom just so we make sure that the opponent can't touch the deck and search anything. This card is a really good hand trap, especially in this deck. We then play 3 copies of Cyframe Gear Gamma and a single copy of Driver just to make sure that our plays can go through, because a lot of times we won't have a monster on the field. So your copies of your Cyframe Gear Gamma come in very handy to be able to stop monster effects. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're playing a single copy of Terraforming. We've got to get to our field spell as quickly as possible. So Terraforming is a definite one-of in this deck. Play a single copy of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is really good because it can stop hand traps. So this card is a great one-of in the deck. Play a single copy of Branded in White. Branded in White is a really neat tech card in the deck because it lets us fusion summon a fusion monster from the extra deck using monsters from our hand or field as a material, including a dragon monster. You can also banish monsters from the graveyard as a material material if you use a Fallen of Albaz as a fusion material from your hand, field, or by banishing itself from the graveyard, which is a really neat effect because we can use some of our cards that are in the grave to summon out our copies of Iron Dash or Mirror Jade, which is really neat. We then play a single copy of Branded Fusion. I'm playing just a single copy of this card because Springans are a very Xyz focused deck, and this card locks you into fusion summoning. So I feel like with this card with Anaconda, this card is a great one of, but I don't always want to see it in my hand. So I'm kind of playing it almost like a Red Eyes Fusion to be able to use this card so I don't get the drawback of it, so I can use it with Anaconda's effect. We then play 2 copies of Branded and High Spirits. Branded and High Spirits is a good card for the deck as well, because it lets you reveal a monster in your hand, and then you get to send a level 8 fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard with the same type that has 2500 attack or defense, and then you can apply the effect that discard the revealed monster, and if you do, add a Fallen of Albaz or a monster that lists it in its text from your deck to your hand. And then during the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard this turn, you can add this card from your graveyard to your hand, and you can only use one effect of this card per turn. But this card is a definite 2 of in the deck. I don't feel like you need 3 copies of it, but 2 is totally fine. We then play 3 copies of the Great Sand Sea Golgonda. This card is the entire deck and is super important to get to, which is why we're playing Terraforming in the deck. This card has the ability that all Springans Xyz monsters on the field gain 1000 attack points, and you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. And if you control no Springans Xyz monster, then you can discard a Springans card to special summon a Springans Xyz monster from your extra deck. And if a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by a card effect, except during the damage step, then you target a monster your opponent controls and it can't attack for the rest of the turn, even if its card leaves the field, which is really good, especially since our cards bounce themselves off the field. We then play 3 copies of Spriggan's Watch. Spriggan's Watch is an insanely powerful search card for the deck because it lets us add the Great Sand Sea Golgonda from our deck to our hand. And if Great Sand Sea Golgonda is already on the field, you can add a Spriggan's monster from your deck to your hand, and if you do, you get to send a Spriggan's monster from your deck to the graveyard, which works really well with Branga to be able to get it in the graveyard. We then play 3 copies of Spriggan's Booty. Spriggan's Booty is really good because if a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by a card effect, then you target an effect monster your opponent controls, and neither player can activate that effect monster's effects on the field this turn. And you can send this face-up card to the graveyard to add a activate a Great Sand Sea Golgonda directly from your deck or graveyard, which is really insane because it basically means that we have like 10 copies of the Great Sand Sea Golgonda between Spriggan's Watch, Spriggan's Booty, Terraforming, and the original copies of it, which is just really good. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing a single copy of Spriggan's Call. Spriggan's Call is a really good one of because it lets us target a Spriggan's monster or a Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard and special summon it. And then during the main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish this card and a fusion monster from your grave, and then target a Spriggan's Xyz that you control and attach a fusion monster that lists Fallen of Albaz as a material from your extra deck to that monster as a material, which is really good because it helps us get some of our copies of Iron Dash into the grave so we can use its effects. We then play a single copy of Spriggan's Blast. Spriggan's Blast is a good one of. If you control a Spriggan's monster, you get to choose one opponent's main monster zone, and if a monster is face up in that zone, then during this turn, it can't attack directly. All its effects are negated, and if no monsters in that zone, it cannot be used this turn. And if you control a fusion monster that lists Fallen of Albaz as a material, then you can choose 2 zones instead, which is really good, especially with all the new branded support. We're then playing a single copy of Spriggan's Interluder. Interluder is a good one of. I don't feel like you need any more than a single copy of each one of these cards, but Interluder is really good because it has the ability that when your opponent activates a card or effect, then you can return a Spriggan's Xyz that you control to the extra deck and then apply one of these effects to negate the card or negate that activated effect, or special summon a level 8 monster from your graveyard, which is a pretty good effect. It also has the ability that if a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by card effect, just like all of your Spriggans do, then you can make all monsters your opponent currently control lose 1000 attack until the end of this turn, even if this card leaves the field, which is really good because this card is also a continuous trap card. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Mirror Jade, because Mirror Jade is just an insanely powerful boss monster that just takes a Fallen of Albaz plus a Fusion, Synchro, XZ, or Link monster to summon this card, and you can only control one copy of this card, and then once per turn, quick effect, you can send a Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that mentions the Fallen of Albaz as a material and banish a monster on the field, but you can't get this effect the next turn. And also it has the ability that if this Fusion summon card in Total Control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, then you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase of this turn, which is really good to have this card as a board wipe. We then play a single copy of Lubellion. Lubellion is a really good one-of in the deck. I don't feel like you need any more than a single copy of Mirror Jade and Lubellion in this particular build, but this card is really good because it has the ability, if this card is Fusion summoned, you can discard a card and then Fusion summon a level 8 or lower Fusion monster from your extra deck, except another copy of this card, by shuffling the Fusion materials listed on it from back into the deck from monsters on the field, graveyard, or face-up that are banished, and for the rest of the turn, this card cannot attack, which is totally fine because usually you're returning this card and your Fallen of Albaz back into the deck so you can summon out Mirror Jade. We then play a single copy of Albion. Albion is a good one-of because it has a good effect that if it's sent to the graveyard and it was sent there this turn, then you can add to your hand or set a branded spell or trap directly from your deck. We then play 3 copies of Iron Dash. Iron Dash is a really good card in the deck because it has the ability that just takes a Fallen of Albaz plus an effect monster that was special summoned this turn, and then during your main phase, you can move this card that you control to another of your main monster zones, and then you can destroy all face-up cards in this card's column. And then during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, then you can add to your hand or special summon a Springans monster or a Fallen of Albaz from your deck, which is an awesome effect because we have a lot of different ways to get this card into the graveyard now. We then play 2 copies of Exablower. Exablower is a great boss monster for the deck and super easy to summon, that you get to choose one of your opponent's monster zones or spell and trap card zones, detach any number of materials from this card, and if you do, destroy the same number of cards your opponent controls in the chosen zone and its adjacent monster zones and spell and trap card zones, which is really good. So if you pick a middle zone, you can destroy the zones beside it and the zones below it, and it basically makes like a cross pattern that you're going to destroy like an AoE in an RPG, which is pretty good. It also has the ability that during your opponent's main or battle phase, quick effect, you can manage this card and until the end phase, which gets it off the field to basically so it's protected so it can bring itself back, and it dives below the Great Sand Sea, which is really cool. We then play 2 copies of Spriggan's Merrymaker. Merrymaker is one of the first cards you're going to summon from the extra deck because it has the ability, if this card is special summoned from the extra deck, then you can send a Spriggan's monster from your deck to the graveyard, which is pretty good to get one of your monsters in the grave so that you can get attached to this card as a material. And then during your opponent's main or battle phase, quick effect, you can banish this card until the end phase. And then if you banish this card with at least 2 or more XZ materials, you can also send a Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, which means you can send Iron Dash. We then play a single copy of Time Thief Redoer because it's just a good rank 4 to be able to include in the deck. It's just a really awesome card. We then play a single copy of Double A Zeus to board wipe, 1 copy of Omega because we do play the copies of Gamma in the deck, so it's super easy to make this card and rip a card out of the opponent's hand, 1 copy of Anaconda to be able to use with Branded Fusion, and finally a copy of Link Spider just in case we do get Nibiru'd. You can use this card to be able to out the token, which is really good, and then climb into a copy of Anaconda. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really awesome deck. I really love Spriggans. It's pretty budget to actually pick up Spriggans, which is really nice because the majority of the cards are common. The only thing that's kind of pricey is a copy of Exablower, but everything else is very cheap, especially the branded stuff, because you can pretty much pick it up all from a single structure deck, which is really cool, besides the copies of Spriggan's kit, which is really easy to find. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can come part of our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.